Spread wider, I'm not stopping until my seed takes root. The lonely 70-year-old rancher told the Elias had always loved the land. It was dry, harsh, and unforgiving, but to him, it was alive. Every rock, every grain of soil, every struggling sprout of green told a story. He had spent 70 years on Solaria, a lonely world of red dust and relentless sunlight, tending the ranch that no one else wanted. Humans had come here long ago, dreaming of turning barren planets into thriving colonies. Many had left after a few failures, seeking worlds that were easier to live on. But Elias stayed. He stayed because he believed in the stubborn power of life. He believed that even in the driest soil, a seed could grow if someone cared enough to nurture it. Each morning, Elias rose before the twin suns peeked over the horizon. The sky was a deep orange that gradually softened into pink, and the shadows of jagged mountains stretched across the dusty plains. He brewed a cup of strong coffee from the last beans he had harvested, savoring the warmth. Solaria had no clouds to hide the sun, and the heat could become unbearable in a matter of hours. Yet in those quiet mornings, he felt a sense of peace. There was no noise, no rush, no expectations, only the soft hum of the wind and the occasional distant caw of a desert bird. The ranch was small by Earth standards, but vast by Solaria's. It spread across acres of engineered soil where his crops grew. These were no ordinary plants. Elias had spent decades working with genetically adapted seeds designed to survive Solaria's harsh environment. Some were hardy grains, others strange-looking shrubs that stored water in thick leaves. They were stubborn like him, refusing to die even when storms swept through or when the ground cracked under the intense sun. Elias moved through the fields with careful steps, his hands brushing against the leaves. He checked each row, noting the sprouts that had survived the night. He smiled as he found a few that had grown taller than the rest, their tiny stems reaching for the sunlight. "Good," he muttered to himself. "You've made it another day." Despite the solitude, Elias never felt entirely alone. He had the land, the plants, and memories of the family he had long outlived. He often spoke aloud as he worked, as if the universe itself could hear him. "Spread wider," he said, tilting his head to the suns. "I'm not stopping until my seed takes root." It was more than a command to the plants, it was a promise to himself. He had lived long enough to see the world around him abandoned, and he wanted to leave a mark. He wanted life to continue after he was gone, to thrive where humans might one day return. Solaria was not kind to newcomers. The dust storms came without warning, and the thin atmosphere made breathing difficult for those unaccustomed to it. Most settlers left because of loneliness or the unyielding terrain. Elias had lost count of the ships that had flown away over the years, carrying families who had once laughed at him for staying. "Old man, why bother?" they would ask. "No one will be here to see your work." But Elias had never cared about spectators. Life was not about applause, it was about persistence, about proving that even in impossible conditions, humans could succeed. As the suns rose higher, the heat began to bake the ground. Elias wiped sweat from his forehead and checked the irrigation system. The automated sprinklers were old but reliable, spraying water in precise arcs across the soil. Water was precious on Solaria, and every drop had to be accounted for. Elias had developed a system of underground reservoirs and solar-powered pumps, a combination of old Earth ingenuity and new Solarian technology. The plants drank deeply, and Elias watched with quiet satisfaction as their leaves glistened. By midday, the light was harsh, and the wind carried fine dust that made the eyes sting. Elias retreated to the small shade of his greenhouse, a simple dome of transparent metal that trapped the sun's warmth while protecting delicate seedlings. He knelt beside a tray of young sprouts, running his fingers through the soil. These were his newest creations, plants engineered to grow in the most barren areas of Solaria. He had spent years crossbreeding, testing, and adjusting their DNA, always looking for traits that would help them survive. He whispered to them as if coaxing them into life. He thought often about the future. He imagined children of settlers returning to Solaria centuries from now, walking through valleys that had once been nothing but red dust. He imagined them marveling at fields of green, at orchards heavy with fruit, at streams that had been created from the ingenuity of humans and the stubbornness of a single man. It was a dream that few understood, but it kept him going. Solaria's nights were cold and quiet. When the sun sank below the horizon, the temperature dropped sharply, and the sky transformed into a canvas of stars. Elias often stood outside his small home, looking up. The stars were familiar and distant, reminders of the vastness of the universe. He thought about Earth, about the oceans and forests he had only heard of in stories, and about the other colonies scattered among the stars. Solaria was lonely, but it was also a place of possibility. In the silence, Elias felt a connection to the greater human story, the story of survival, exploration, and the refusal to give up. One evening, as he tended a young grove of shrubs, Elias noticed a flicker in the sky. At first, he thought it was a meteor, but then he realized it was a small drone descending toward the ground. It landed with a soft hum, kicking up a swirl of dust. Elias approached cautiously, though he had no fear. He had grown used to the strange and unexpected in his long years on Solaria. The drone was small, with a sleek metallic body and glowing blue lights. A voice spoke from it in clear, calm tones. Identification, Research Unit Lyra. Mission, Environmental Survey. Acknowledgement, presence of cultivated flora detected. Elias chuckled softly. You found me, he said. I've been here a long time. The drone hovered closer, scanning the crops. Your cultivation methods are unconventional for this region, it stated. Analysis suggests potential for ecosystem expansion. Elias' eyes sparkled. He had been talking to himself for decades, but now someone or something was listening. Potential for expansion, huh? He said, smiling. That's exactly what I've been trying to do. Over the next few hours, Elias explained his work to Lyra. The drone listened intently, recording data and asking occasional questions. Elias spoke about the soil, the engineered seeds, the irrigation system, and the long-term dream of spreading life across Solaria. As he talked, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Perhaps he was not as alone as he had thought. Perhaps his stubbornness had finally found a witness, even if it was only a machine. The suns began to set again, painting the sky with shades of violet and gold. Elias walked to the edge of his ranch, looking over the fields that stretched into the distance. He imagined what the future could hold. Perhaps one day, ships would return, carrying people who would marvel at what had grown here. Perhaps the seeds he had planted would thrive and spread, reaching places even he could not imagine. He felt a deep satisfaction knowing that his work might outlive him, a testament to the perseverance and ingenuity of humans. As night fell completely, Elias returned to his small home, tired but content. He brewed another cup of coffee, savoring the warmth and the quiet. Lyra remained nearby, its sensors glowing softly in the dark. Elias looked out the window at the stars, speaking aloud once more. Spread wider, he said. I won't stop until life takes root. The words were no longer just a promise. They were a mission, one that might one day extend far beyond Solaria. In that moment, Elias felt connected to something greater than himself. He was a small part of humanity's vast journey, yet his persistence mattered. Each sprout that survived the harsh soil was proof that humans could adapt, endure, and thrive even in the most unforgiving environments. And as long as he lived, Elias would continue to plant, nurture, and dream, confident that life would find a way. The wind whispered through the dry plains, carrying dust and the faint scent of the growing crops. Elias closed his eyes, imagining a future where green fields stretched across Solaria, where life had taken root in the once barren land, and where humanity's stubborn spirit shone among the stars. For Elias, the journey was just beginning, and he would not stop. Not now. Not ever. The next morning, the twin suns rose slowly over Solaria, casting long shadows across the red plains. Elias stepped outside, breathing in the dry, warm air. The wind had settled overnight, leaving the ground smooth and quiet. The crops shimmered with morning dew that had condensed in tiny pockets, and for a moment the ranch seemed almost magical. The silence was broken only by the gentle hum of Lyra, the research drone that had landed the previous evening. Elias smiled as he approached the drone. Good morning, he said, brushing dust off his jacket. Lyra hovered slightly above the ground, sensors blinking. Good morning, Elias. Analysis of the terrain indicates optimal conditions for seed propagation today. The drone responded in its calm, neutral tone. Elias chuckled. Optimal conditions, huh? That's exactly what I need. Together, they began the day's work. Elias loaded trays of young seedlings onto a small cart, their roots wrapped carefully in soil to protect them during transport. Lyra scanned each tray, recording data about soil moisture, plant health, and expected growth patterns. The drone was not just a machine to Elias. It was a partner, a student eager to learn about the stubborn plants that had survived decades of harsh conditions. Elias explained his planting techniques as they moved across the fields. He spoke about spacing, about which seeds needed more water, and about which would do better in partial sunlight. Each plant has a personality, he said. Some are shy, some are bold. You treat them wrong and they won't grow. You treat them right and they'll surprise you. Lyra recorded every word, its memory storing the information for later analysis. By mid-morning, Elias had reached the edge of the fields, where the soil was thinner and the terrain rougher. Most settlers had avoided this area, claiming it was impossible to cultivate. Elias smiled at the challenge. Impossible is just a word, he said, kneeling to inspect the ground. Nothing is impossible if you know how to work with it. He carefully dug shallow holes and placed the seedlings inside, covering their roots with soil. Lyra hovered close, scanning the new plants. Observation growth probability is uncertain, but potential is high, it said. Elias nodded. That's why I try. Nothing worth doing is certain. As the suns climbed higher, the heat began to intensify. The air shimmered above the plains, and the soil radiated warmth. Elias wiped his brow and took a long sip from his water flask. He knew the plants would need protection during the hottest part of the day. Using lightweight reflective panels, he created temporary shade over the newly planted seedlings. It was tedious work, but he moved with quiet determination, as if the very act of planting was a conversation with the planet itself. Lyra observed silently, occasionally asking questions. Elias, why have you devoted your life to this work when so many have left Solaria? The drone asked. Elias paused, looking out over the horizon. Because life is worth it, he replied. Because even if no one sees it, even if I'm gone, something can survive here. Something can thrive. Humans have always spread across the stars, and every time we do, we carry the hope that life can flourish anywhere. If I stop, then this world stays empty, and I won't let that happen. The drone's sensors scanned the soil again, analyzing moisture levels and temperature fluctuations. Your methods are unconventional but effective, Lyra stated. The survival rate of seedlings exceeds predicted averages. Elias grinned. Conventional methods never brought life to Solaria. You have to think differently if you want to succeed. He glanced at the horizon, imagining what the planet could become if he succeeded. Green fields stretching across valleys, orchards full of fruit, small streams of water winding between them. The thought made his chest swell with pride. By afternoon, a gentle wind picked up, carrying fine dust across the plains. Elias adjusted the reflective panels and moved some seedlings to more sheltered spots. He worked tirelessly, knowing that each seed had a chance to grow only if it was protected from the harsh elements. The work was exhausting, but he welcomed the fatigue. It reminded him that he was alive, that he was still part of something greater. As the day wore on, Elias and Lyra ventured beyond the immediate ranch boundaries. Elias had prepared a series of experimental plots in the rough terrain surrounding his main fields. These plots were designed to test how the plants would survive in different conditions: rocky soil, sandy ridges, and slopes exposed to constant sunlight. He carried trays of seedlings carefully, placing them in the prepared plots with precision. Lyra hovered nearby, recording every detail. You're doing more than planting, Lyra observed. You're creating an ecosystem. Elias smiled at the drone's insight. Exactly. Life doesn't grow in isolation. You have to think about the environment, the soil, the water, the wind. Everything matters. If you take care of all these things, life finds a way to thrive. As evening approached, Elias returned to the main ranch, exhausted but satisfied. The seedlings in the experimental plots had been placed successfully, and the main fields had been inspected and tended. He looked out over the land, imagining the green valleys that might one day replace the red dust. "Spread wider," he whispered, his voice carried by the wind. "I won't stop until life takes root." The night on Solaria was cold, but it brought a sense of calm. Elias prepared a simple meal and sat outside, sipping warm tea while looking at the stars. The twin suns had set, leaving the sky dotted with countless points of light. Lyra rested nearby, its sensors dimmed for the night. Elias felt a connection to the universe in these moments. The vastness of space could be overwhelming, but it was also a reminder of the possibilities that lay ahead. He thought about the future of Solaria, about the settlers who might one day return and find a thriving world. He imagined children running through green fields, tasting the fruits of the orchards he had planted, and learning about the perseverance that had made it possible. The thought filled him with warmth. He had dedicated his life to this work not for recognition, but for the simple truth that life was worth nurturing. Lyra hovered silently, recording data from the day. Observation: Elias demonstrates consistent determination and adaptive problem-solving, it said. His actions significantly increase the probability of sustainable growth across the planet. Elias chuckled softly. You speak like a scientist, Lyra, but I suppose that's your job. I just do what I love. As the night deepened, Elias prepared for the next day. He planned to extend the irrigation system to the new experimental plots, ensuring that every seed had a chance to survive. He also intended to document the progress of the seedlings, noting which ones thrived in different conditions and adjusting his methods accordingly. The work would be ongoing, but he welcomed it. Every challenge was an opportunity to learn, to adapt, and to prove that humans could shape the world through persistence and care. Elias often spoke aloud, as if the words themselves could encourage the plants. Grow strong, he said softly. Take root, spread wider. Show the universe what humans can do. He imagined the seedlings stretching toward the suns, their leaves absorbing light and energy, their roots digging deep into the soil. In his mind, each plant was a small triumph of life over adversity, a testament to the determination that defined humanity. The drone remained nearby, observing, learning, and occasionally asking questions. Elias, what motivates you to continue despite the solitude? It asked. Elias looked up at the stars. Because life is worth it, he replied. Because the future depends on the choices we make today. Every seed I plant is a promise to the future. If we give up, then nothing grows. But if we persist, then life spreads, and humans leave their mark among the stars. Night on Solaria was quiet, but it was alive with possibility. The wind whispered through the fields, rustling leaves and carrying the faint scent of growing plants. Elias felt a deep sense of purpose. He was alone, yes, but he was not powerless. Through patience, care, and persistence, he could shape the world around him. He could leave a legacy that would outlast him, that would spread life across Solaria and perhaps beyond. As he finally retired for the night, Elias felt a sense of peace. The fields were tended, the seedlings planted, and the experimental plots prepared. Lyra rested nearby, ready to record the next day's progress. Elias closed his eyes, imagining green valleys, thriving orchards, and streams of water winding through the plains. He imagined life spreading wider, taking root in every corner of Solaria. And in the quiet of the night, Elias made a silent promise. He would not stop. He would continue to plant, to nurture, to spread life until it thrived across the planet. The future belonged to those who persevered, and he would see it flourish with his own eyes, one seed at a time. The twin suns would rise again tomorrow, and with them, another day of work, hope, and growth. Elias was ready. The mornings on Solaria had grown warmer as the suns climbed higher in the sky. Elias rose early as always, stretching his stiff joints and breathing in the sharp, dry air. The twin suns cast long shadows across the fields, and the soil gleamed red in the soft light. The ranch had become a place of quiet beauty, a stubborn patch of life in a world that had once seemed empty. Elias moved across the land with the careful ease of someone who knew it intimately. Every stone, every ridge, every small patch of green had a story. Lyra hovered beside him, recording everything. The drone's blue lights blinked softly as it scanned the terrain and logged data about the crops. Elias, environmental readings indicate optimal conditions for experimental propagation today, it said. Elias smiled at the words. Then we have no time to waste, he replied, gathering trays of seedlings for the day's work. This morning the task was different. Instead of planting in the prepared fields, Elias intended to expand beyond the ranch, into the rougher terrain that had once seemed impossible to cultivate. He had identified areas with thin soil, rocky ridges, and steep slopes, places where most settlers had given up. But Elias saw potential. Life was persistent, he reminded himself. If humans could survive across the stars, surely a plant could survive here. The first challenge was the rocky ridge to the north. The soil was sparse, dotted with jagged stones, and the slopes were steep. Elias carefully carried seedlings up the incline, setting them into shallow holes and covering their roots with the few patches of soil available. The sun beat down on him, and sweat ran in thin streams down his face, but he did not complain. Every plant he placed felt like a small victory, a demonstration that life could persist even in difficult conditions. Lyra hovered close, scanning each seedling as Elias worked. Observation, growth probability is lower than in primary fields, but survival is still possible with proper care, the drone said. Elias nodded. That's what makes it interesting. Every plant that survives here proves that humans and nature can overcome challenges together. He paused to admire a small group of shrubs he had planted at the base of a rocky outcrop. Their roots were hidden among stones, their leaves already reaching toward the sun's. Even in this harsh environment, they showed signs of life. As the morning progressed, Elias moved to a sandy ridge that stretched like a wave across the horizon. The ground was unstable, and the wind threatened to scatter the soil. He dug carefully, placing seedlings in shallow depressions and patting the soil down gently. "You have to respect the land," he said aloud. "It's stubborn just like you." The drone recorded every movement, noting the methods and the results. Elias often forgot that Lyra was a machine. He spoke to it as if it were a companion, a friend who shared his vision of a living Solaria. By midday, the twin suns were high and the heat was intense. Elias paused to drink water, wiping his brow with a dust-streaked hand. Lyra hovered close, its sensors measuring temperature and soil moisture. "Warning, environmental stress is high. Plants require additional protection to ensure survival," the drone advised. Elias nodded. He had anticipated this. Using lightweight reflective panels and small windbreaks, he created temporary shelters for the seedlings. Each adjustment took patience and care, but it was worth it. The seedlings were fragile, but with guidance they could grow strong. As he worked, Elias thought about the broader purpose of his efforts. It was not enough to cultivate life on the ranch. He wanted the land itself to transform, to become fertile and green, to support life that could thrive even without him. This vision of spreading life across Solaria was ambitious, but Elias had never been afraid of ambition. Humans had always expanded, explored, and adapted, carrying hope wherever they went. He wanted to do the same on a planetary scale. In the afternoon, Elias moved to a small valley that had been mostly ignored by settlers. The soil here was slightly richer, but shadows from nearby cliffs limited sunlight. He carefully planted the seedlings in small clusters, adjusting the angle of their leaves toward the light. "Even in shadow, life can find a way," he said, his voice carrying across the quiet valley. Lyra scanned the plants and recorded data, noting how each one responded to the conditions. Elias found satisfaction in every detail, every observation, every small success. By evening, the work was done. Elias surveyed the expanded fields, rocky ridges, sandy slopes, and shadowed valleys. The seedlings were planted, protected, and monitored. The land was beginning to show signs of transformation. Here and there, green sprouts emerged, reaching toward the suns, defying the harshness of Solaria. Elias smiled. "Spread wider," he whispered to the wind. "I won't stop until life takes root." As night fell, the temperature dropped sharply. Elias prepared a simple meal and sat outside, looking at the stars that stretched across the sky like a vast silver web. Lyra hovered nearby, its sensors dimmed for rest. Elias felt a connection to the universe in these quiet moments. Solaria was vast, lonely, and challenging, but it was also alive with potential. The stars reminded him of the countless worlds humans had touched and the possibilities for life beyond any single planet. He thought about the future, imagining settlers returning to Solaria centuries from now. He imagined children running through green valleys, tasting the fruits of orchards, and learning about the dedication and care that had made it possible. Each plant, each sprout, was a testament to human ingenuity and persistence. Every small victory against the harsh land reinforced his belief in the strength of life and the potential of humans to shape their environment. During the night, the wind whispered through the young plants, rustling leaves and carrying the faint scent of growth. Elias walked among the fields, touching the leaves gently, checking that the protective panels and windbreaks held firm. "Grow strong," he said softly. "Spread wide, show the universe what humans can do." The seedlings were small, but Elias saw them as the beginning of something much greater. In time, they would flourish, and the barren planet would transform into a living, breathing ecosystem. The following morning, Elias woke to a soft hum. Lyra had begun early scans of the newly planted areas, measuring soil conditions, sunlight exposure, and moisture levels. Elias joined the drone outside, checking the protective panels and adjusting them where necessary. "Every detail matters," he said. "Every adjustment could mean the difference between survival and failure." Lyra recorded his observations, learning from his experience and understanding the subtle decisions that made his efforts successful. Elias decided to experiment further. He selected a section of the rocky ridge and carefully mixed seeds from different crops, testing how they would grow together. Some required more water, others more sunlight, but he believed in the power of adaptation. Life had a way of finding balance when given the chance. He planted the seeds in carefully measured patterns, adjusting soil depth and moisture, and even shaping tiny windbreaks to protect the young plants from sudden gusts. As the day progressed, Elias noticed small sprouts beginning to emerge in areas he had planted days earlier. The green shoots were fragile, but they were alive. He crouched beside them, gently brushing dust from their leaves. "There it is," he whispered. "You made it. Keep growing." He felt a surge of joy and pride. Each tiny sprout was proof that his work mattered, that persistence and care could overcome even the harshest conditions. The twin suns began to descend, and the land took on a golden glow. Elias looked out across the expanded fields, imagining how green valleys might stretch across the horizon in years to come. He felt a deep sense of purpose and satisfaction. The land was changing, slowly but surely, and his vision of a living, thriving Celeria was beginning to take shape. That night, Elias prepared for rest, knowing that tomorrow would bring another day of planting, tending, and observing. The land was vast, and there was still so much work to do, but he welcomed the challenge. Life was worth every effort, every careful adjustment, every small triumph against adversity. Lyra hovered nearby, quietly recording observations. Observation: Elias demonstrates remarkable foresight, adaptability, and persistence. These qualities significantly increase the probability of long-term success for seed propagation across the planet, the drone noted. Elias smiled at the words. "You're learning well, Lyra," he said. "Together, we'll spread life further than anyone thinks possible." As the night deepened, the wind whispered through the fields, carrying dust and the faint scent of growth. Elias closed his eyes and imagined a future where Celeria was green and alive, where settlers would return to valleys full of life, and where humans would continue their story among the stars. Each seed he planted was a promise, a hope, and a testament to the power of persistence. He felt connected to something greater than himself. Celeria was no longer just a lonely red planet. It was a place of possibility, a testament to human ingenuity, patience, and determination. And Elias knew that as long as he lived, he would continue to plant, nurture, and spread life across the planet. The twin suns would rise again tomorrow, bringing warmth, light, and another opportunity to grow, nurture, and expand life. And Elias was ready. He would not stop. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. The days on Celeria had begun to feel different. The once barren land now bore small patches of green, tiny sprouts that had survived the harsh sun and dust storms. Elias walked through his expanding fields with a quiet pride that had grown over the years. Each plant, no matter how small, was a victory, a reminder that life could flourish with care, patience, and human ingenuity. The ranch no longer felt empty. It hummed with potential, a testament to his stubborn persistence. Lyra hovered beside him, scanning every inch of the land. "Observation: the survival rate of seedlings has improved by 15% since last month," it reported. Elias smiled at the drone. "Good, that's progress. That's what happens when you treat life with respect and patience." He had grown used to Lyra's calm voice, almost as if it were a companion rather than a machine. Over time, the drone had become a partner in his work, observing, learning, and helping him experiment with new planting techniques. That morning, Elias had a new goal. He wanted to spread life even further, beyond the safe boundaries of his ranch. He had prepared new plots in areas where settlers had once said nothing could grow. The rocky ridges, the sandy slopes, and shadowed valleys would now host more of his carefully engineered seeds. He carried trays of seedlings, carefully lifting each one and planting it with the precision of a craftsman. Every small mound of soil covered a tiny promise of life, and Elias treated each as if it were precious. The wind had picked up by mid-morning, carrying fine red dust across the plains. Elias adjusted protective panels over the young seedlings and created small windbreaks to shield the most fragile plants. Lyra hovered nearby, recording data and offering suggestions. Observation: certain seedlings may require additional watering during wind events, it advised. Elias nodded. I know, that's why I built the reservoirs and pumps. Each drop counts here. The effort was tiring, but he did not mind. Every small success made the work worthwhile. As the day progressed, a strange sensation filled the air. Elias noticed a distant shimmer on the horizon, an unusual sight on Solaria. His heart beat faster. Visitors, he murmured to himself. It had been decades since any humans had come close to his ranch. Most had abandoned the planet entirely. Elias adjusted his hat and squinted toward the horizon. A small fleet of ships glimmered in the sunlight, their engines barely audible against the wind. The ships landed cautiously, their feet kicking up clouds of red dust. A group of young explorers emerged, their faces bright with curiosity and awe. They were Earth-born, or perhaps from other colonies, carrying the hope and excitement of those who still sought to explore and expand. They looked around, eyes wide at the sight of the green patches that Elias had created. They had heard stories of a stubborn old man who had turned a barren world into a place of life, but seeing it in person was something else entirely. Elias approached the newcomers, his pace slow but confident. "Welcome to Solaria," he said, his voice carrying across the fields. The explorers stepped closer, clearly amazed by the thriving crops and small groves. "We didn't believe it was possible," one of them said, voice full of wonder. Elias smiled. "Nothing is impossible if you try and refuse to give up." The young explorers began asking questions, eager to learn from the man who had dedicated his life to this planet. They wanted to know about the engineered seeds, the irrigation systems, and the protective methods he had used. Elias spoke patiently, explaining every detail, every decision, every adjustment. Lyra hovered nearby, recording everything for later analysis. The drone seemed to understand the importance of this meeting, its sensors capturing the story of human persistence. By afternoon, Elias led the explorers to the experimental plots beyond the ranch. They walked along rocky ridges, sandy slopes, and shadowed valleys, marveling at the small sprouts that had taken root despite the harsh conditions. "Look at this," Elias said, pointing to a cluster of shrubs that had grown taller than expected. "Life finds a way if you give it a chance. Humans do too." The explorers nodded, clearly inspired. Elias demonstrated how he adjusted the soil, created shade, and guided the seedlings to survive. He showed them the small reservoirs and solar-powered pumps, explaining how each drop of water had to be used carefully. The explorers asked countless questions, scribbling notes and recording data. Elias felt a surge of pride. His work, once considered pointless by others, was now inspiring a new generation of humans to continue spreading life across the stars. As the suns began to descend, Elias took a moment to survey the fields. The green patches had grown slightly since morning, and the experimental plots showed signs of promise. He felt a sense of satisfaction that went beyond personal achievement. The work was no longer just his, it had become a shared mission. The explorers would continue what he had started, carrying his methods and vision to other parts of Solaria, and perhaps even to other planets. Night on Solaria was calm and clear. The twin suns had set, leaving the sky filled with stars that seemed close enough to touch. Elias prepared a simple meal, sharing some of his modest provisions with the explorers. They spoke of Earth, of other colonies, and of dreams for the future. Elias listened, offering advice and encouragement, his heart swelling with the knowledge that humanity's story continued through these young adventurers. Lyra hovered nearby, its sensors dimmed for the night. "Observation: the combination of human experience and technology has the potential to transform entire ecosystems," it said. Elias chuckled softly. "You're learning well, Lyra. Together, we've done something remarkable." He looked out over the fields, imagining how they would grow over the coming weeks and months. Each sprout, each leaf, was a testament to the power of persistence, care, and human ingenuity. The explorers decided to camp near the ranch for the night, setting up small tents and observing the fields with quiet fascination. They spoke of how rare it was to find someone who had dedicated an entire life to a single mission, who had refused to give up despite loneliness, challenges, and doubt. Elias listened, feeling a deep sense of connection to humanity's broader journey. Celeria was no longer just a lonely outpost. It had become a symbol of hope, proof that humans could leave a lasting mark wherever they went. In the early hours of the night, Elias walked among the seedlings. He touched the leaves gently, checking that the protective panels and windbreaks held firm. The air was cool, and the faint hum of life, the rustling of leaves, the gentle shift of soil, filled the quiet. "Grow strong," he whispered. "Spread wide. Show the universe what humans can do." He imagined the green valleys expanding across Celeria, streams winding through fertile soil, and orchards heavy with fruit. Each small plant was a seed of possibility, and each success was proof that persistence mattered. The explorers awoke early, eager to continue learning from Elias. He showed them how to plant in different conditions, how to measure soil quality, and how to create microenvironments to protect young seedlings. He emphasized patience, careful observation, and adaptation. "Life is not about speed," he told them. "It's about persistence, attention, and the willingness to learn. Humans survive because we never stop trying, no matter how harsh the world may be." By midday, the explorers were actively participating in planting new seedlings beyond the ranch. Elias guided them, offering advice and encouragement, and Lyra recorded every detail. The land was slowly transforming, one small sprout at a time. Elias felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The mission he had pursued alone for decades was now growing into a collaborative effort, with humans working together to expand life across a once barren world. The suns began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields. Elias paused, watching the explorers tend the seedlings. He felt a profound sense of satisfaction and hope. Celeria was no longer empty. Life was spreading wider, taking root in places once thought impossible. And the human spirit, the ingenuity, persistence, and determination that had brought him this far, was at the heart of it all. That evening, Elias and the explorers gathered to celebrate the day's work. They shared stories, food, and laughter, the warmth of human connection filling the quiet air. Lyra hovered nearby, recording observations and learning about the interactions between humans, technology, and the land. Elias felt a sense of completion, knowing that his lifelong dedication was inspiring a new generation of humans to continue the work. As night fell completely, Elias stepped outside once more. The wind rustled through the leaves, carrying the faint scent of growth. The stars twinkled overhead, and the twin suns rested below the horizon. Elias whispered to the seedlings, to the explorers, to the universe itself, "Spread wider. I won't stop until life takes root." It was no longer just a promise. It was a shared mission, a testament to human perseverance and vision. The explorers returned to their tents, inspired and eager for the next day. Elias remained outside, gazing at the stars, imagining the future. Celeria would grow. Humans would return, settlers would marvel, and life would flourish. And all of it had begun with the determination of one lonely man who refused to give up, who saw potential where others saw nothing, and who believed in the stubborn, unyielding power of life. The twin suns would rise again tomorrow, bringing light, warmth, and another opportunity to nurture life. Elias was ready, and this time he was not alone. Together with the explorers, and guided by the quiet persistence of Lyra, life would spread wider, and Celeria would bloom. The twin suns rose over Celeria in brilliant shades of orange and gold, casting long shadows across the fields that had once been barren red dust. Elias stood at the edge of his ranch, his old hands resting on a walking stick, eyes scanning the land with quiet pride. What had once been sparse soil with a few stubborn sprouts now shimmered with life. Patches of green stretched farther than he had dared to hope, and the air carried the faint, sweet scent of growing plants. Celeria was waking up, and the planet's heartbeat was becoming stronger with every passing day. Lyra hovered beside him, its sensors scanning the land. Observation: vegetation coverage has increased by 42% in the last cycle. Biodiversity is expanding as new seedlings thrive in multiple environments, it reported. Elias smiled, feeling a surge of satisfaction. "It's more than just numbers," he said softly. "It's life thriving where no one thought it could. That's what matters." The explorers who had arrived months ago were already awake, moving through the fields with careful steps. Some tended the younger seedlings, checking moisture and soil health, while others documented changes in plant growth and environmental adaptation. They had become students, friends, and collaborators to Elias, learning from his decades of experience and adding their own fresh ideas. Celeria had transformed from a lonely, red world into a small hub of human ingenuity and hope. Elias walked among the fields, touching leaves and inspecting roots. He paused at a small grove of shrubs he had planted near a rocky ridge. The plants had grown taller than he expected, leaves glistening in the sun's light. "You've done well," he whispered, his voice full of pride. "You survived where others thought you would fail. That's the way of life. That's the way of humans." Lyra hovered nearby, recording the interaction. "Observation, emotional responses positively affect human perseverance," it noted. Elias chuckled softly. "You learn that quickly when you've lived as long as I have." The day's task was ambitious. Elias planned to extend the irrigation system further into the wild terrain, allowing new seedlings to thrive in places that had been untouched. He and the explorers moved through rocky ridges, sandy slopes, and small valleys, carrying trays of seeds and planting them carefully. Every movement was deliberate, every adjustment mattered. "Life doesn't grow by chance," Elias said, placing a young plant into a shallow depression and covering its roots gently. "It grows because someone cares enough to nurture it." By midday, small sprouts began to peek through the soil in areas that had been completely barren weeks before. The explorers watched in awe, taking careful notes and adjusting protective panels to ensure survival. "This is incredible," one of them said. "We never imagined Celeria could look like this." Elias smiled. "It's not about imagination, it's about persistence. Humans adapt, we endure, and we nurture. That's why life spreads." The twin suns rose higher and the heat began to intensify. Elias reminded the explorers to stay hydrated while he adjusted the irrigation pumps, ensuring water reached the furthest seedlings. Each drop was precious, carefully measured to give the young plants the best chance to survive. Lyra hovered nearby, analyzing soil moisture and sunlight levels and offering suggestions for optimal placement. "Observation, environmental management significantly increases growth success rates," it noted. Elias nodded. "Exactly. It's not just planting seeds, it's creating the conditions for life to flourish." As afternoon came, a gentle breeze rustled through the growing fields. Birds, small and hardy, had begun to appear, drawn by the newly thriving vegetation. Their songs carried across the land, a sound that had not been heard on Celeria for decades. Elias paused, listening. "You see," he said softly to Lyra and the explorers, "life doesn't just survive, it invites more life. It spreads, connects, and grows stronger." The explorers nodded, inspired by the sight and sound of the land coming alive. By evening, Elias and the explorers had planted the last trays for the day. The land was dotted with green patches, each one a small testament to human determination and ingenuity. The sun began its descent, casting long shadows and painting the sky with deep purples and golds. Elias stood at the highest ridge, looking out over the transformed landscape. What had once been red dust was now a mosaic of life: fields, groves, small streams, and thriving shrubs. Celeria was no longer barren, it was alive. As the explorers settled for the night, setting up small tents near the central fields, Elias walked among the seedlings one last time before dark. He touched leaves gently, ensuring the protective panels held firm. "Grow strong," he whispered, his voice carried by the wind. "Spread wider, take root, show the universe what humans can do." Each plant was a small victory, a sign that humans could not only survive in harsh worlds, but could create life and hope where there had been none. That night, under a sky filled with stars, Elias reflected on his journey. He had spent 70 years alone on Celeria, tending the land, testing his ideas, and nurturing life. He had seen failures, setbacks, and harsh storms that could have destroyed everything. Yet through patience, care, and persistence, he had transformed a lonely red world into a place of hope. And now he was no longer alone. Humans had returned, ready to learn, to help, and to continue his mission. Lyra hovered silently, observing the interactions between Elias and the explorers. "Observation, human collaboration accelerates the spread of life and improves survival rates across multiple environments," it recorded. Elias smiled. "It's true. Humans are stronger when we work together. That's how we reach the stars and leave our mark. The following morning, the explorers were already awake, eager to continue planting and monitoring growth. Elias led them to the farthest experimental plots, places he had once thought unreachable. He demonstrated techniques for adjusting soil density, creating wind protection, and monitoring sunlight exposure. The explorers followed, working carefully under his guidance. The plants responded well, stretching toward the suns, leaves glistening, roots reaching deep into the soil. By midday, the first small fruit began to appear on some of the shrubs. It was a simple, hardy fruit, designed to survive Celeria's challenging environment. Elias knelt beside the shrubs, gently touching the fruit and smiling. "Life rewards persistence," he said. "Every seed, every plant, every drop of water counts. And one day, these will feed settlers who return to this world." The explorers watched in awe, clearly inspired by the tangible results of years of dedication. As afternoon turned to evening, the twin suns began to set. Elias and the explorers returned to the central fields, exhausted but fulfilled. The land had changed before their eyes, becoming alive and vibrant. Streams glistened in the fading light, shrubs rustled in the gentle breeze, and birds sang songs of survival and hope. Celeria had been transformed from a lonely, barren world into a thriving ecosystem. That night, Elias sat outside his small home, sipping warm tea and gazing at the stars. Lyra hovered nearby, sensors dimmed for rest. The explorers gathered around, sharing stories, ideas, and laughter. Elias felt a deep sense of connection, not just to them, but to the human story as a whole. Humans had always spread across the stars, leaving marks of their ingenuity, persistence, and care. Celeria was now part of that story, a proof that humans could create life even in the most challenging environments. Elias spoke quietly, almost to himself. "Spread wider," he said. "I won't stop until life takes root, not just here but everywhere it can." Humans can endure, adapt, and thrive. That's what we do. That's who we are. The words were carried by the wind, reaching the young seedlings, the explorers, and perhaps even distant future travelers who might one day visit this green planet. The explorers looked at him with respect and admiration. "You've shown us what humans can achieve," one of them said. "We'll continue your work. We'll take your lessons to other planets, to other barren worlds, and spread life further than anyone imagined." Elias smiled, feeling a sense of fulfillment that words could not capture. His life's work had become a mission that would outlive him, a legacy of persistence, care, and human ingenuity. Over the following weeks, the explorers continued to work alongside Elias. They expanded the irrigation system, planted additional seedlings, and monitored growth in increasingly distant areas. Each day, the land transformed further. Valleys that had been barren now held thriving groves, rocky slopes supported hardy shrubs, and small streams nourished the expanding fields. Celeria was alive, and the green patches spread wider with every passing day. Elias often walked among the fields at night, speaking softly to the plants. "Grow strong," he would say. "Spread wider, take root, show the universe what humans can do." And the plants in their own way seemed to respond. Life had found a way, nurtured by one stubborn man, guided by technology, and shared with a new generation of humans who believed in the same vision. Months passed, and the transformation of Celeria continued. Birds and small animals had returned, drawn by the thriving vegetation. The once lonely planet was now full of sound, movement, and life. The explorers documented the changes, preparing to bring knowledge and seeds to other barren worlds. And through it all, Elias remained at the center, guiding, teaching, and dreaming. One evening, Elias climbed the highest ridge on the ranch, looking out over the green valleys stretching into the distance. The twin suns cast long golden shadows, highlighting the thriving crops, shrubs, and small forests that now covered the land. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that life had spread, that Celeria was alive, and that humanity's stubborn determination had made it possible. Lyra hovered beside him. "Observation, human persistence, combined with technology and collaboration has transformed Celeria from a barren world into a thriving ecosystem," it reported. Elias nodded, smiling. "Yes," he said softly, "and this is only the beginning. Life will continue to spread, long after I am gone." As night fell, Elias and the explorers gathered in the central fields. They shared a quiet moment of reflection, looking at the stars above. The winds rustled gently through the thriving plants, carrying the promise of future growth. Solaria was no longer a lonely world. It was a living testament to human ingenuity, perseverance, and hope. Elias closed his eyes, feeling the weight of decades of work, struggle, and persistence. "Spread wider," he whispered one last time to the wind, to the land, to the universe itself. "I will not stop until life takes root. Humans endure, adapt, and thrive." And now life thrives here on Solaria because we refuse to give up. The twin suns would rise again tomorrow, bringing warmth, light, and another day of growth. But Elias knew the future was secure. His seeds had taken root. Life had spread wider. And humanity's story would continue, not just on Solaria, but wherever determination, care, and ingenuity could carry it. Solaria was alive. Humanity had persevered. And one stubborn, lonely rancher had proven that even in the harshest corners of the universe, life and human spirit could thrive.